Hi, this is Heidi, episode 70, Expectations and Resentment. Life isn't a spectator sport. Success comes to those who show up every day with a pocket full of courage, grit, and a little sparkle. I'm glad you're here. Hello. Happy December 2020. We almost made it to 2021. How is your December going? Have you ordered everything? Have you ventured out to the mall or stores? I think I'm almost done. I've gone to the mall twice to quickly get things. And I do just wonder what the future of malls is in the coming years. They are just one of the many things in the world that we're going to look back and say, well, COVID-19 changed how we did this. All of my kids will definitely remember many before and afters. Okay, before I get to today's episode, I hope you're a member of my Facebook group for women, Lose Weight and Gain Confidence with Heidi. We are learning to love our bodies thin, and we're all gaining insight from each other. This week, I was able to live stream my How to Stop Emotionally Eating webinar from Zoom to the group live, as well as to the people that did have the link. But many watched it from the group. And I'm going to do that webinar again this week, and upcoming weeks will have different topics. Make sure the emails you get are going to your inbox. Some email systems, they send them to spam or junk. So just check there as well as for emails with links. I know it's annoying. I have to search all over for the emails too. Okay. I think it's important to talk about expectations around the holidays, but really the type of expectations I'm talking about today are not just about the holidays, but our overall expectations or unwritten standards and rules for how certain people should act, and also expectations for ourselves. One of the reasons so many people experience more depression or loneliness or sadness around the holidays is that their expectations aren't realistic. They're bigger or grander than they should be. We forget that holidays also are going to be a mix of 50% negative and 50% positive. So we create more disappointment or dirty pain because of how high our lofty expectations are. If we just expect the holidays will be a giant potpourri of all experiences and emotions, and people are going to be human, we will have much more emotional access to acceptance and contentment and even happiness. Today, I want to focus on our expectations of other people, our expectations of our life, and also our expectations of ourselves, and how all of these are linked to the emotion resentment. We hardly ever think of unmet expectations in another person without feeling resentment, which is heavier than disappointment. I looked up resentment in the dictionary, and the first definition said it is bitter indignation of being treated unfairly. And we can all think of how a bitter taste is in our mouth, and that's just what resentment feels like through our body, bitter. And it makes us bitter. And it's all because we have this righteous indignation and expectation that life should be, quote, fair, whatever we've defined fair as. And life isn't, quote, fair. We've never been promised that. So as soon as we drop that expectation, we start experiencing life differently. Now, I can hear people thinking, well, shouldn't we aim for fair? Yes, maybe. Possibly aim to try to equalize as much as we can among groups of people and classes, but it's easier done from an acceptance that we all can't define, quote, fair. Everyone sees the world through very different lenses that think fair is something different from another person. Okay, let's talk expectations of others. We all do this. From a young age, we probably all created pictures in our head and unwritten rules of what a, quote, good friend would do. We judged our first boyfriend if he was a good boyfriend, if he did or didn't give gifts. We had stories and pictures in our head of what the ideal college roommates would be like. Would they be neat or not? Would they share clothes? Would they be quiet or not invite us when they went out with friends? From a young age, at least by the time we were teenagers, we all started painting this picture of what our future family, spouse, children, career would look like. The funny thing is all of these pictures and visions were of the good times, the happiness, when everything works out, the dreams. The pictures didn't include sadness and disappointment. Now, of course, dreams and goals of the future are great, and they're so important. What becomes a problem with these pictures and stories is they usually turn into manuals we write, or mental policy and procedure books, or handbooks for how people in our life should act. And when we explain these manuals or handbooks to other people, it can all come across as being justified. But this is a very sneaky way that we have set ourselves up for several things. We've set ourselves up for disappointment, resentment, blaming other people for our emotions, judging, criticizing, and above all, not focusing on the only thing we can control, how we want to act, who we want to be in the unfolding movie of our life. These handbooks and manuals end up being phone book-sized barriers between us and other people, and they create disconnection. Okay, let's dive into this. You were probably like me. Before I was married or had kids, I had an idea of the type of wife and mother I would be. I had an idea of what my house would look like. We'd eat family dinner together each night with everyone being respectful to each other. I thought I'd be so patient and I'd read nonstop to my kids. I had expectations and a picture of the type of husband I'd be attracted to and marry. A lot of my expectations were based on things that my dad did or didn't do. The first giant expectation bubble was burst when I couldn't breastfeed, and I really beat myself up for this. My kids didn't sit still as much as I wanted them to for our great reading times from my dreams. They didn't follow my rule book on how kids should act. Now, my husband really is a top 10 husband, but of course, there have been times when he hasn't done what I had in my handbook in my head, and then I'd blame him for what I was feeling. This giant mental written handbook was a giant list of expectations, and when he didn't live up to some random rule, I was the one who felt the pain of resentment, and it does feel bitter. Now, here's the thing. Other people are not good at following our handbooks or manuals. Other people are only good at one thing, and that is being themselves. And when we let them be exactly who they are, we then get to stop taking this bitter pill of resentment. We stop fighting reality, which, remember, makes us lose 100% of the time. And we start experiencing so much more peace and calm when we stop this fighting. When we throw away these handbooks and really see and let people be themselves, we can focus on the only thing we can control. We focus on who we want to be in our lives, who we want to be in their lives. One of the most hurtful expectation handbooks that most of us write as we become adults is what our parents should have been like in our childhood. We start seeing how other adults are, maybe comparing our upbringing to those of friends, or we start seeing how other adults act. Then we write retroactive handbooks for what good parents should do. These manuals become background noise and venting sessions with our siblings and friends or spouse. If my parents had paid for this, then I'd have this advantage now. If my parents hadn't gotten divorced, then this wouldn't have happened. If my mother had been like this other mother, well then what? When we dig into these handbook chapters, which I've done for myself and for clients, we find it boils down to this. We think something would be different, better in our life then and now. Our memories of how we were, quote, slighted in childhood become magnified and distorted as we retell or ruminate on our parents' shortcomings. Our mental expectations and handbooks set us up to resent the humanness and the wholeness of our parents because somehow these manuals don't include grace and the fact that, turns out, our parents are human. They are having their own human experience. They have their own classes and obstacles. They're also here to grow. And our memories were from an immature perspective. We have no idea what challenges our parents were really dealing with. Here is what is absolutely true. Our parents are only good at one thing, being exactly who they are, nothing more, nothing less. They'll never meet our high handbook standards. And the best thing for us and them is to just drop and burn the handbooks. When we let people be a mess and also be amazing, all the space the bitter resentment pill was filling with judgment can now be a place for love and acceptance. And doesn't love for people who really did their best? Doesn't that feel so much better? Our parents don't need to apologize for anything or even explain their humanness. Some may, and sometimes that will shed light and understanding and context on why they did different things. But our job is to make them feel like they were and are the very best. Not because they've lived up to some high standard or expectation, but because we accept them for being their real self, for showing up to love us, make mistakes, and just be them. Because isn't that what we want for ourselves? Don't we want people to drop their expectations of us? Have you ever given a gift and the receiver didn't think it was up to snuff, or you miss someone's birthday or important occasion and they are noticeably distant after? Regardless if the oversight was accidental or not, this creates disconnect, distance between us and others. And remember, it's usually a good thing that we can't read their minds, just like we don't want them to be able to read ours, or at least I don't want people to know all of my thoughts for sure. One sneaky thing we do in our mental handbooks for others is we want them to kind of be like us. We think that for people to fit into our lives, they should act and reciprocate the way we do. Drop everything the way we would help them execute some grandiose event. If we pay for everyone to go to a play or amusement park, they should do the same the next time we all go. If we give a gift for a certain occasion, they should as well. If we send Christmas cards, of course, a good friend or family member does too. Now, okay, side note, I am not sending Christmas cards this year. Guess what? My whole family, we all look the same as we did last year. Okay, all of these expectations aren't fair to us or to anyone else. We need to be okay being who we are and accepting and loving our friends and everyone in our life as they are. Here's the thing, y'all. When we do this, we punish ourselves if we don't accept them. Other people sure can sense our judgment or disappointment, but guess what? We are the ones that actually feel it on a deeper level. It's like our handbooks and manuals keep punching us in the face each time we complain about someone else. Turns out, all the punching is really in our control. I remember work situations where I expected people to be organized or communicate the way I did, and when they didn't, I was upset. Now, this anger then did two things. First, I was the one who felt it, and it blocked me from seeing and being grateful for the ways that coworkers were compensating for my weaknesses. I also then spent energy mentally complaining instead of focusing on what more I could bring to the project. I remember having expectations that my children would play the piano like I did. Now, music is wonderful, but I didn't love playing the piano. I just had this weird handbook that a good mother made her kids take piano lessons. Then I resented that it was so hard to get them to play and that they didn't like it. Sheesh, look at how I set myself up for disappointment. My picture of the ideal mother and children somehow didn't include the arguing and the bribing. I set myself up to take a bitter pill. I forgot I needed to let my kids grow and be who they want to be. And I needed to reevaluate my own expectations of myself. I realized I didn't handle piano playing kids very well. I had a great deal of patience to develop. My expectation revealed a big personal weakness that I needed to work on. So over years, I got rid of that one rule, at least in my handbook. Now, years ago, I had a picture in my head of the type of mother I would be to teenagers. I wanted a bustling, busy house. We'd be the place where kids would hang out. I'd make cookies all the time, buy pizza on weekends. But it hasn't turned out that way. It's taken me years to realize my kids aren't keen on those kind of get-togethers. We don't have a social structure that really feeds into that. One child is a real introvert, and honestly, teenagers don't always socialize that way anymore. I punched myself in the face with my mental handbook for a few years until I realized I can just drop this expectation and start appreciating how fun it is to be with them on the weekends. There are actually lots of advantages to my kids being home with us and our current picture. There's nothing wrong with my kids or this new social scene. They aren't wrong to be who they are. My kids and actually everyone is right for being exactly who they are. A few beautiful things happen in our lives when we throw away these mental manuals and expectations. First, we suddenly have lots of mental time and space to focus on showing up as our highest version. We stop being critical of others, who actually are all doing fantastic jobs of being themselves. And we get to identify where we can forgive more, love more, deepen empathy for another human. Because when we're full of expectations, we deny ourselves this opportunity to see another person as a whole person, as a complex and complete person. And truly, what is the upside to us keeping these expectations in handbooks and stories when they create suffering in us and distance in our relationships? Is there an upside? I can't find one. And trust me, I have. If I could, I would write the most beautiful handbooks on how others should be. Oh, it would be so gorgeous, and I've tried. But it has ultimately only ended up hurting me. So I've started just expecting people to be themselves, to show up exactly as they are. And when we do this, side by side, we start developing a clearer picture and acceptance of exactly who we are. We start seeing clearly our humanity and our shortcomings. And we develop the self-grace and love that we get to make mistakes and be ourselves too. We don't need to fit molds or expectations of others if it isn't who we want to be. I hear people say, well, what's wrong with having high standards for other people or thinking other people can act a certain way or accomplish certain things? Of course you can, but always remember, this is us judging what another person is capable of and what we think will bring happiness to them. And we really have no idea what another person is learning from their life experiences. They have been given a whole different itinerary and toolkit for this life than we were. Another thing I hear is, well, are you saying I should just allow someone to be abusive or treat me poorly? No, this isn't what it means to drop expectations. In fact, when we drop expectations, we give ourselves back the power for our emotions and actions. We aren't blaming the other person for how we feel, and we have more options to set boundaries and leave abusive situations. Because also remember, now we're focusing our energy on the one thing we can control, our behavior, who we want to be in these situations. What about if you didn't expect your child to get addicted to drugs and they are? Well, all the energy spent complaining that you didn't expect this is all wasted. It turns out they were supposed to because that's what happened. Or we didn't expect our child to take a much different route in life or have such unique challenges. Yes, we're going to be sad and disappointed. We need to hold appropriate space for this, but from a place of taking responsibility for those emotions inside us. Then we get to focus on who we want to be in these cases. How can we use these situations to create love and empathy for us and for them? It could be this is the only way we can enlarge this emotional muscle in our life. If we resent our child for their choices, we'd be doing two things. First, we'd be taking responsibility for their choices, and their choices, their actions and results are created by their thoughts and emotions. We don't create our children's results. And second, we'd be again creating more pain in our life and creating distance and disconnect with our children. And I'm guessing this is the exact opposite of what all of us want. We could use this opportunity to thoughtfully and quite vulnerably decide who we want to be. What kind of support and anchor can we be? Resentment in all cases, but especially these, is a big flag that we have a need that isn't being met. Is it a need to know we are a good mother? Maybe a need to know we are loved unconditionally. Maybe resentment shows us we need to focus on some self-appreciation and self-love. Remember, these are all emotions only we can create in our life. We create them with our thoughts by changing the stories and picture of what life should have been like, and accepting and honoring that life is perfect and going exactly as our journey was supposed to go. We just didn't know that there would be a few detours or cranky travel companions. Resentment is also me wishing I was perfect, wishing the people around me were perfect, which again is a completely unrealistic expectation of everyone. And this is what I think is worse. This resentment plants seeds that will grow into shame and guilt, which will grow into huge obstacles for our growth and ability to be the type of human that we ultimately want to be. And this resentment blocks us from being able to uncover our gifts and strengths and letting those really shine. I recently shared a very vulnerable situation with a few close friends, and I know it created instant connection between us. I opened myself up to possibly being judged, but I knew it was a safe space. And this was only possible because long ago I dropped some expectations of what my life, what my children's life would look like. I made decisions that I wanted to create connection with people. Now, if you find resentment is an emotion you feel often, I have 4 steps for you, my friend. And trust me, I rinse and repeat these often myself. First, we have to identify that we have a handbook or manual of expectations for others. And second, we have to clearly identify what we have control over. Then third, we have to release control over everything else. And I mean everything else that we don't have control over. Don't be tricky like me and pretend that there are, maybe just a few stray things that we can control. Let go and have confidence in the other people in your life. Then fourth and most important, constantly focus on being in control of how you want to think, feel, and act in every situation. It's a wonderful place to get to when we can say, my handbook and the picture were wrong. This other person isn't wrong. Now, who do I want to be? Nothing has gone wrong for me or my spouse or my family. We were supposed to have these trials. Now, how can I use this to be a better version of myself? What is this here to teach me? This is hard, friends. I get it. I'm in it with you. I just know each time I get to an anchored place where I take back my power and allow myself to see another person or myself or my life with compassion and in a whole sense, I make better decisions about who I want to be with each of these. I stop blaming other people for how I feel and maybe even blaming them for a reflex of hurt or defense. And I can feel and express love for them in a genuine way. And I've experienced this breaking down walls in relationships and creating connection. It works, I promise. It's very worth our discomfort, dropping our pride and getting real. Now, reach out to me if you want help with this. This work alone can heal families, relationships. This is real and deep love. Okay, that's it for today. Make sure you're in my Facebook group, Lose Weight and Gain Confidence with Heidi. When the group coaching starts, I will have more limited spots for private one-on-one coaching packages. So if you want personalized coaching, sign up for a free consult call on HeidiBenjaminson.com. Let your children see you change and grow. You've always hired coaches for them. Now it's time for you to have a coach. I'd be honored to be yours. Have a great week.